Ladies and gentlemen, Honda.
This is real, people. This is not a drill.
It's time for Points to Ponder.
Yes, I admit I got a thinking problem.
All right, your mic is hot in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Your mic is hot. Make it hot.
Good Wednesday morning to you, and welcome to Points to Ponder. I'm Ron Ponder, and we've got a special program today. You've heard us talk about it all week and all last week. We have a debate between the two candidates for 50th District Representative, Todd Bosley, who is the Democratic challenger to the Republican incumbent, Todd Snitchler. We also have Martin Olson in the House. As you know, he's the, author would be a good word to call him, of the Stark County Political Report. He's videotaping this, so you can also see a videotape of both Todds on his blog. Todd Snitchler. He's a Republican incumbent for the 50th District. And Todd, you mentioned the state budget. It's been projected that there's going to be about an $8 billion deficit in the state budget next year. How do you propose, or how would you suggest whichever gubernatorial candidate wins, whether it's Ted Strickland, the incumbent, or John Kasich, the Republican challenger, what advice would you give them, and how would you want them to try to address the huge budget deficit?
I think that's tied for 1A and 1B as far as our top priorities when it comes to the next General Assembly. The other, of course, is jobs. But specific to your question about filling an $8 billion budget hole, I think we have to do a couple of things. One, as I've talked about before and I'll continue to talk about, is looking at performance audits for government agencies. We've taken 2 years where there's been inaction and a lack of political will to move the bill out of the House, which would require that governmental agencies be evaluated and audited to confirm that, not that they're spending their money, because we know that's done in financial audits, but that they're actually getting the results that they're charged with getting. The state of Washington did a similar program, spent $14 million and saved $4 billion over the course of 3 to 5 years. Those are the kind of savings that will help us balance the state's budget. I think we have to be very careful about not going too far, but making smart, wise decisions. And I was talking with actually Mr. Olson before we started. The situation's broken. The low-hanging fruit is gone, and we need to start taking a hard look at ideas that perhaps have never been discussed before, including taking a look at performance audit process, restructuring state government, finding ways for us to make the state more competitive, because more jobs equals more tax revenue means that we end up filling that hole. And we need to be very honest and do as President Reagan said, don't be afraid to see what you see. This problem didn't start overnight, and it's not going to be fixed in 6 months. This is a short-term, medium-term, long-term objectives have to be set out and established in effort for us to fill that budget hole. And I think the first steps we do is looking at restructuring government and passing that performance audit legislation and getting people to work, figuring out how we can save taxpayer dollars today.
Okay, that's Todd Snitchler. Todd, how would you propose, what suggestions would you make to the governor about filling that $8 billion budget hole?
Just for clarification, this is Todd Bosley.
Did I say Snitchler?
No, you said Todd, but we're both.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. You know my problem with names, so keep me straight, Todds.
You haven't called me Scott yet today.
I know, at least not on the air.
Yeah. Our problem in the state of Ohio revolves around one issue, and that is jobs. That we have to create a tax base that's viable. And as jobs continue to leave the state of Ohio, our budget problems are only going to get worse. My opponent, Mr. Snitchler, has a good idea with the governmental audits. That's a great idea. It's the approach, though, that we have to look at. How are we going to get there? How are we going to actually make that happen? Because we've been beating our head against the wall in Columbus for 2 years. And the approach, I think, is really what this election will come down to. How are we going to actually get that done? When we look at how the state of Washington did it, they used $18 million, really is the actual number, and it was voted on, and they used a citizens committee.
It cost them $18 million to do the audit?
And what they did is they voted to use a percentage, 0.16 of their sales tax, to fund these state audits that they had. But they used an independent auditor that came in and evaluated everything. I think the idea is good, but we have to make it work for the state of Ohio. One of the ways I think you make it work is you include accountability for the auditor's office while we're doing this. We use independent auditors, and they're paid on a percentage of what they actually save us. we may say to a government agency, don't drive that car from point A to point B, and if you don't do that, you're going to save $10. What actually has to happen after the state audit, though, is that order has to be given and it has to be followed through. So state audits in general seem like a good idea, but nationally only about 12% of those are implemented. So just the idea of we need to audit it and we can save money doesn't really work. We need to create jobs. We need to structure the program so we can actually get it sold in Columbus. The Democrats and Republicans both will support it, and it's got to be viable for that to happen. Once we do that, then that program becomes very good for the state of Ohio, and we can make some changes that need to be made.
Okay, and Todd Schnitzler, one of the points he made was an independent auditor. Do you agree with that, or use the state auditor?
The way our bill is drafted says the state auditor would be responsible.
Whoever
for
it may be, because right now it's
That's
Mary
correct.
Taylor, a Republican, but it's not going to be that, or it may not be that.
That's exactly right, and I've committed before, and I'll say it again. I don't care who the governor is and who the auditor is. If I'm fortunate enough to be returned to Columbus, I'm going to introduce that bill as drafted now, the same way in the next General Assembly, because this isn't a partisan issue. This is a taxpayer savings issue. And I agree, and Mr. Bosley's done a good job of pointing out what should be done in committee, which is if you don't like the way the bill is drafted, but you like the concept, then debate the bill, amend the bill, change the bill. Once I put that bill into the hopper, it's no longer mine. I don't control it. Excuse me. And so then other committee members and other members of the House have the ability to amend it and change it and actually get a good work product, which we have no objection to. But no action's been taken on that, and that's been particularly frustrating because it sounds like there's universal agreement on the idea, but the bill hasn't budged out of committee.
Is that because of politics? Is that because the Democrats control the governor's office and the House of Representatives, and the Republicans control the Senate? Todd Bosley?
You have to make this a nonpartisan effort. You cannot.
Can you do that with a split legislature like that?
You can do it with an independent auditor. You cannot take an auditor that is either Democrat or Republican. In this case, a Republican, send them in to audit Democratic offices. It's not going to work. It's going to create chaos and confusion, and no matter what the result is, it's tainted. That's why it has to be an independent auditor from the outside. I may also add that the state auditor has audited Stark County folks since 2003, and there's $3 million stolen that was not caught. I think that's a very valid point when we look at, can this actually happen? We can't find $3 million in Stark County. How are we going to find money anywhere else?
I think there's a sharp distinction there, however, between a performance audit and a finance audit. And there's also a document that's signed by the Board of Commissioners, the county auditor, and the state auditor, which says these are the facts upon which we will perform this audit. And those facts are these. And so the state auditor can only operate with the work that they've got. And I'm not here to defend the state auditor. She can do that for herself. But I am here to say that the difference between a finance audit where $3 million is missing and a performance audit where you're seeking to improve performance of agencies is a night and day. And Mr. Bosley's partially correct. The state of Ohio already did a performance audit in 2005 on the Department of Job and Family Services and found literally hundreds of millions of dollars of savings. And
Has anything been done about that?
the number he cited at 12% is about the number of recommendations that have been implemented at the Department of Job and Family
Are
Services.
they implementing the suggestions and saving us money?
About 12% of them, and 88% remain untouched.
Okay. But the bottom line, both of you, Todd, is you both agree that a performance audit should be done. You disagree. Of course, Todd, you don't care if it's independent or the state auditor. Todd Bosley, you say an independent auditor.
Right, but that pitch until today, that's the first time I've heard Mr. Schnitzler make that pitch of an independent auditor.
I didn't make a pitch.
No, he just said it didn't matter to him.
Right.
Right, but up until this point, it's always been the state auditor. That's been the talk. That's been the holdup in Columbus.
Okay.
Well, then there ought to be an amendment to the bill. That would be the easiest way to solve that, and I don't control the committee. So hear the bill and offer the amendment.
Okay. We're talking to both Todds here, Todd Bosley, Todd Schnitzler. They're both running for the 50th District Representative's position. Todd Schnitzler is the Republican incumbent. Todd Bosley is the Democratic challenger. Both of you mentioned job creation. So we're going to take a break for the news. When we come back, I want to ask you some specifics on how you propose to help the state of Ohio create jobs.